Hi Crafty friends, it's Donna here, and I've got a set of 3 ballerina cards for you today that could be made with any image. The real focus here is about how to highlight your feature image, and I've got 3 different ways to do that. So even if you're not into ballerina cards, why not hang around? I've got some tricks and tips for both using stamps and for highlighting images in this video. The crisp outline on these ballerinas doesn't actually happen by accident. These are new stamps, and so before I stamp them for the first time, I'm conditioning the stamps. I use a soft white eraser and rub all over the stamps, and then give them a good wipe off with a microfiber cloth that won't leave any residue. You can actually feel the difference on the surface of the stamp, and I'm also rubbing over to check I haven't left anything behind. I'm then stamping with Memento Tuxedo Black ink because I want to do some Copic colouring, and with just one stamping I've got a nice clean image. Conditioning my stamps with an eraser is a step that I sometimes try to skip, but actually I'm always happier with my results when I do it. Whenever I colour with Copics, you'll often find little test patches all over the page as I trial different colour combinations. Today's colouring will be no exception. I've written the numbers of the markers that I've used on the page, and I'll keep adding to that as I follow through the colouring. We'll have a quick look at the colouring of just one of the ballerinas. Because these images are so small, I'm not doing anything special, just adding in areas of dark, and the lines on the image help me to find those darker areas. Wherever there's a crease line on the ballerina's skin or on her skirt, I'm choosing that to put my darkest colour down, and then working my way out from there to my lightest colours. I have just a few markers with me here in Australia at the moment. I brought just a couple of colours in each colour family, and so I'm having to be a little bit creative, and I often used that RV00 and R20 together as my lightest colour. The RV was a little purple, the R was a little apricot, but together they gave me just that shade of ballet pink that I was looking for. The shoes are so teeny tiny that I haven't gone with a fancy blend, just a tiny bit of mid colour and then filling in the rest with light. I'm not going to show you the colouring of this skirt, but I thought I would at least show that I chose to put the darker colours underneath the skirt and the lighter colour on top, so that it looked like a pale skirt with dark petticoats. I've gone with E55, E53 and E01 for the ballerina's skin, although you could have used the pink and given her ballet tights as well. I've chosen to go with bare skin for these girls. I'm putting a little bit of shadow where her dress would shadow her leg and where one leg is in front of the other, and I'm adding shadows where the lines that show her muscles are on the body, and then filling out from there, getting lighter and lighter, and leaving the palest colours for her face. Finally, I've coloured the hair again very simply, using a little bit of the darkest colours in the bun and towards the edges, and then just filling in the middle with a highlight. Next, I'm going to cut these ballerinas out. My big top tip for using scissors is to, as much as you can, hold the scissors still and turn the paper. It really helps smooth out the curves. If I'd had all of my equipment with me in Australia, I may have laid this image down onto a craft mat and cut out the middle between her legs and under her arm with a craft knife, but my knife is in Japan, and so I'm just going to leave it white for today's card. The stencil I've chosen for today's card is called Leaf Burst, And I've chosen it because it has an image that fans out from a central point. That means it's going to be really good for directing the eye. And my choice of ballerina will help me decide where to place that stencil. I don't want to have a ballerina that's facing off the card, or that will direct everybody's eyes off the card and away from my work. So I've chosen this ballerina that faces left and set the stencil towards the right of the card. If I'd had the footage, I would have showed you blending teeny bikini ink from the centre of that image outwards and then adding some dull pink to the centre of that circle to really focus the eye down. I've cut the panel with a stitched rectangle die and then I'm sticking it down with a big sheet of foam adhesive. The ballerina is stuck up with foam tape as well, and then I'm using the elements on this design to all point to each other. The ballerina points up to the sentiment, and the little sparkle gems also keep that flow from that nice centre dark pink right through to the sentiment. It trains the eye to look at all of the elements on the card. The background for this next card is going to use some dies. These circlet layered background dies draw the eye into the centre, and that's where I'm going to put my feature image, the ballerina in the case of today's card. These dies come in a set of 3, but I'm only using numbers 1 and 2 today because I thought that number 3 was a little bit heavy for my ballerina's little legs. I've partially cut each of those and I'm layering them up with some glue. Once I've done that, I'm going to trim off the corners so that I have a 90-degree angle. Then I'll stick that down into the corner of my background panel. And as always, set my MISTI down to hold everything flat. While that's drying, I'm going to cut the sentiment. All of the sentiments for today's cards come from the Better Days Ahead embossed cutter parts pack. Because these die cuts draw the eye into the centre, that's where I'm putting my ballerina, and I'm also making sure that I've chosen a ballerina that will face in towards the centre of the card before adding the sentiment as well. The final card and the final way to highlight the image is to shine a spotlight from behind. I'm preparing a couple of elements for this. I've run some coloured paper through the Tulips 3D embossing folder for my background, and I've used the Ella's Garden Leafy circle die to create the window. When I cut this the first time, I felt like the leaves came down a little bit far on the right, and I wanted them to sit a little higher, and so I cut a second panel. I'm not going to let the first one go to waste though. I'm layering up that behind to give my panel some height and also some strength. Once again, relying on my trusty MISTI to hold everything flat while it dries. Once that has dried and is flat, I'm going to use those little corners that I cut off to build things back up on the back before gluing this front panel to my tulip embossed paper. I'm just checking carefully that I have the back facing towards me and the front facing down so that when I flip it over, I'll have the side facing that I want, and then, once again, we'll hold that down in place. Both the ballerina and the sentiment are popped up with some foam tape, and I've used quite a bit of glue to hold that whole panel to the card because it is very textured. That's all for today. I hope that you have enjoyed these cards and can take something forward from them to highlight different images, not necessarily just the ballerinas, but all kinds of things. I'll leave you with some pictures of the finished cards. Until next time, stay safe and stay crafty, and I'll be back again soon with some more cards. Bye for now.